This intro was just done. I'm going to repeat it because I have the slides to do it. I'm Ryan. This is a picture of my face. This is a small room. I assume everyone can see it anyway, except the people behind the pillar. My background is in user experience and strategy. I studied design. I chased user experience for a long time. And now I'm a design director, which means different things to different people. I work for an agency called Siberia. What we do is very vague. I like to say we define, design, and evolve businesses. Again, it's obnoxiously vague. But I think what's important to know is we work with really great people at really great companies. We have a really smart team, and it's very fun. It's vague, but it's fun. And I got into the door. Cool. That's the formalities out of the way. I also kind of regret removing my title slide from this, so you're going to have to, for those that don't know the title, you can guess it as we go. So I feel like for probably the first 6 years of my career, it was all I could do to learn everything I could about the process, right? I would research it, I would take notes, I would recreate everything I saw, I would try it out on projects. I would adjust it if I got it wrong, and then I would preach it to everyone, right? Kind of like what I'm doing now. It was in my portfolio, of course, very first slide, process. It was at the top of my CV, process. All the different processes I knew, all the different artifacts I could create through that process, right? I really wore it on my sleeve. And every time I joined a new agency, I was like, man, I really just want to go back to being a designer. And then I would look at their processes and I'd be like, this needs some love. And I very quickly became the process guy. And this happened over the last 4 jobs that I've worked, and I'm trying to un-embrace it, but also embrace it. And as a group of people and people in this room, I find we're obsessed with process. And I think I kind of assume, hey, maybe it's just me, but then every designer I talk about, they're always just looking at a step-by-step flow of things that they can do to improve their workflow. And this ranges, right? This ranges from the tiniest way you can improve the way that you work in Sketch to the way that you run meetings with other people, right? We have a process for how we run our meeting to make sure we get the most value out of it. To the macro, hey, I can take your idea and I can validate it with customers, and I can build it out, and I'm going to ship it, and take it to market, and I'm going to take over the world, right? There's a process for everything. And if there isn't a process for everything, we can come up with one. And I still am a process human. And I think process is great because, for the most part, it's pretty predictable, right? You kind of know what's going to happen next in this sequence of events, right? You don't have to create something new every single time. It's pretty efficient, and by being efficient, it makes you feel proficient, right? It's a safe zone, it's a comfort blanket, it's I know what I need to do to get to the next thing. It's shareable, right? So you can bring other people along on that journey with you. Hey, we're going to go through these 5 steps, and we're gonna create something new. And if you work in an agency, and I've spent most of my career in agencies, you can sell it, right? Most agencies, you go to the website and they're like, these are our 4 steps, right? It's the idea thing, right? And I do believe process is good, right? I'm not here to say process is not good. Process is integral to running successful teams, successful projects, successful businesses. It's essential to scaling those teams and those businesses as well. Process is good. Process is good, and it's good to be process-driven. It's good to think about process a lot. But I do believe that being principle-driven is better, right? And then at this point, there would be a title slide which says process is good, principle is bad, but I took it out. I tried to take out as many slides as I could. I was trying to de-slide myself and remove the crutch of slides. So let's take a really typical by-the-book design flow. I'm hoping people are familiar with this. Please excuse me if you are not. Hopefully, it's many of you. So there's a brief. Hopefully, most of the time you get a brief or some form of brief. You start with some market research, some research in the business you're working with for the product area you're working with. Probably do some customer research. Hopefully, you do some customer research. And from that, you'll create some personas. So you'll create an experience map or some user flows. You might create some use cases if you're close to technology. And then, in an ideal world, pencils to paper, you start sketching, start ideating, wireframing, maybe you'll prototype some of this stuff, maybe you'll take it to users, maybe you'll test it, maybe you'll validate some things you do. You start adding branding, right? You start adding visual design, and then, depending on what world you live in, you document it and you take it over to developers. And you go through to build. And build is like, it's always frustrated me that at the end of all my processes I would write the word build. And more I learned that that is really oversimplifying what those teams do. So I'm assuming most of you here, hopefully, are familiar with this kind of diagram, right? Double diamond, UX&D. I kind of think of it as design thinking, although I'm not sure other people think of it as design thinking. It's very similar ideas, right? And there's 4 stages to it. Discover, work out what problems exist, define what the right problem is to solve, design a solution, deliver that solution to customers or to whomever it might be, right? The problem is within each of these stages, there's a series of microprocesses, right? If you're user testing, you need to define the protocol, you need to define the user groups, you need to recruit those user groups. You then need to set up the actual user testing process, whether that's remote, whether that's in person, or someone else is doing it for you. You need to document the findings, right? There's processes within processes within processes. And what tends to happen when you try and work in this very linear, process-driven way is new things come in and new things happen, right? Maybe you get the wrong brief at the start, and you run for about a week, you run for 2 weeks, and then people are like, actually, this isn't the thing we want you to work on. So you go back to step 1. And because you go back to step 1, you've lost time. You can't see the tiny red crosses, but they're there. You lost time, so you cut out some steps to your process. And actually, because you've lost that time, you actually got less budget than you thought you had. You have less of a team, you have less time. So you just cut out a whole phase. Maybe you cut out personas, maybe you cut out user mapping. This is the only way we do it. Maybe you cut out user research. User research is usually one of the first things that go in this process. Maybe a new person gets added to the stakeholder group, right? And they have different ideas about what you're going to do. And maybe someone in your team goes on holiday, and you have to stop for 2 weeks, or you have to go back 2 weeks when someone else joins. Maybe you get new team members, which is kind of cool. Or you lose 2 team members, right? And that person, maybe you lose your researcher. And now, do I do research? Do I get someone else? Do I get a new team member? Maybe you get put on a new project for a bit, right? Maybe you get distracted for a couple of weeks. Maybe you have other work on, other life commitments. Maybe someone's opinion way outweighs yours for whatever reason, right? And you end up getting really stuck on visual design. You can't get past that hurdle, right? And then you take it to technology, and as I kind of joked earlier, they're like, yeah, we can't do this. Like, no one can do this, right? And you go back to step 1. You go back to like, okay, we need to go back to the ideas table, right? And so we laid out a fairly what I would consider like a standard kind of UX and design process. We added this layer of there are microprocesses within that process, and then you add this kind of unpredictable change that just happens. Like you can't predict this, no one can predict this. It's just like the chaos of life, right? And you may have different processes. You may work within different systems within your organization, right? You may have adopted Agile, right? You may work Agile in this thing. You may have standard operating procedures like how you run meetings. You may have your own process for design production, right? You may have a process for resourcing. And at some point you're going to encounter the same problems, right? Just this unpredictable change. These things you can't control. These things people around you can't control either. Process is based on some degree of predictability. And of course, as we all know, life is unpredictable. So process is good. Not bad. I'm talking process. Love process. But I do believe process is quite inflexible. Right? What do you do when your 10-step method suddenly one of those steps isn't working anymore? When you distill the design, this approach for the double diamond process, it's kind of made up of 2 overarching concepts, right? Solve the right problem. Right? So the first thing is making sure that you are answering the right brief. However you get to what that thing is, it doesn't matter what your process is. It just matters that you feel like you're solving the right problem. And again, that's very difficult to know. And the other half is that you're solving the problem the right way. Within all the constraints, within all the methodologies and processes available to you, all the tools available to you, doesn't matter what you pick and what order you pick them, it just matters that you solve the problem the right way. And really the most important things you need to do as part of this process is validate the decisions that you're making, communicate those decisions to other people, and then between the group of you, agree on them, right? There's as many steps as you want to put in this, but these are the most important things, I think. And what I really mean by this is like, you really need to focus on like the why of the processes and the things that you're doing, rather than on the thing you're doing, right? Personas are great, occasionally. Why are you doing them? I feel like, and this is what I've experienced, if you struggle to implement process if you don't understand the reason for that process existing, and the principles that drive it, right? That double diamond I've tried to build in and teach people in organizations, and everyone's like, you're super obnoxious, like preaching at people, telling us how to run the company. I'm like, no way. And now I'm like, okay, you're right, I am. Way that money. So rather than like align people around this step-by-step process itself, I believe that you should align people around the principles that drive it, right? Because principles are better, as I've already hinted at through this. Because you can align people around a set of beliefs that are flexible. Like the beliefs, like there's no sequence or hierarchy associated to them, right? They're just things that you just believe in that you have to do, and you'll do whatever it takes to do them. So you then, you select the tools that help you achieve those beliefs, depending on the context that you're in and the opportunity that you have. And when things change, which they will, most likely, you adapt because you understand the reason that you're doing things and the why behind things. And you understand what success looks like, right? It's not just making artifacts. And I think I was trying to boil this down to more process, going deeper. Oh, why does Agile work? Why does Scrum work? And I kind of like I went to the awards talk last week, or the awards conference last week, and I found that like one of the stories I was hearing is that like a lot of brands are applying this concept of principles at the highest level of their companies, right? They set their kind of mission statement, the thing that they're all working towards within this company, and they set a bunch of like guiding principles, guiding values of how they're going to get there. Right? It doesn't matter if each team within that organization has different processes and different ways of doing things, they all have the same set of beliefs, and they're all working towards the same goal. And so one of the people there was this lady from Etsy, and this is a very well-crafted statement, that's very well-crafted principles that talk about like Etsy's reason for being, right? And all of their staff and all of their teams rally around these these 6 principles. I don't know why I put Nintendo in there. I think I was writing this whilst also playing my Switch. And like, what's interesting about this is these are very well crafted, whereas Nintendo's like, we need to be unique, we need to be flexible, and we need to be sincere, right? This is what we believe in, and everything you do needs to ladder up to that. Nike have a lot of maxims, like they call them their 11 maxims. Same idea, right? Playboy's, I put Playboy in here because it's a really interesting one, because Playboy is one of our clients. It's a project I've worked on this year. You can go check out the redesign of it. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, other than like this weird shop integration that happened. But Playboy is one of those brands I looked at, and when they came to us, I was kind of like, oh, Playboy. Like, I grew up 10, 20 years ago. Hugh Hefner was a big deal. Playboy was seedy, kind of gross. Kind of still think it is gross. Well, at this point in January, I still thought it was gross. And they walked us through their brand vision, right? What they thought their brand meant, right? And their mission is to create a culture where all people can pursue pleasure, right? Not going to put too many words on that, but right? Conceptually, when they broke that down, it was a really compelling story, right? It was really relevant for the world we're in right now. And they rally around causes rather than guiding principles, but I felt like it fit into the same system, right? They believe in equality, they believe in freedom of speech, they believe in unlocking the constraints around sexuality and gender and empowering that conversation, right? They believe in the pursuit of pleasure for everyone, right? Literally everyone, if you like all this together. And again, it's like, these principles changed what I thought of this brand, and then when we did the work, we did it together. But you can tell me whether they've started to change your perception of the brand. So I think that we can take this same construct to how we approach our work as individuals and how we run our teams and how we run our companies, right? So this is really, again, wildly introspective, but kind of when you reflect on this and when you talk about things We talked about being user-centered, right? Of course, we're all user-centered customer-centered designers. What are the principles that you believe in? When you go up to an interview, when you talk to other people, people don't ask you what your processes are. They ask you, what are the things that you believe are most important, right? And I believe I've got like a couple minutes left. So, someone's obsessed with a process, someone's running out of time to talk to you. I'm just going to skip ahead, and I'm just going to talk about like some of the processes that I believe in, and hopefully these give you a grounding for things that you may also believe in or not. Right, so I believe in outcomes over outputs. Like this is almost the whole theme of the talk. This used to be a version of this talk, which is like asking why the things you're doing and what they ladder up to what you're achieving. And that counts for everything from from the way you run meetings to the way you talk to other people, right? What's the outcome of the thing you're trying to achieve rather than just having the meeting itself? I believe in putting people first. This used to be like put users first, put humans first. But this applies to everyone. Of course, you want to be customer first, but you also have to think about the business and the people around you. You need to think about your junior staff, your senior staff. You need to think about your managers, your colleagues, your technical, and you need to put them first as well, right? This makes you a better designer by empathizing with everyone. Embrace constraints. We know those difficult conversations are going to happen, right? We know things are going to be tough at certain times, and rather than push back on them, I feel like we should embrace them, right? That's really important that you embrace what the business needs to achieve, and you embrace the limitations of the technology that you're working with. And the better you understand them, the better you embrace them, the easier they are to change, which is a strange idea, but it seems to be working out at the moment. I believe very strongly in the importance of communicating and collaborating with people, right? It's really important to have conversations. It's really important to bring other people into the room with you when you're working through things, right? There's no process attached to this. There's no direct exercises attached to this. You don't have to be in the same room. It could be email. But it's like, it took all my effort to put teamwork makes the dream work. I feel like I've said it out loud too many times that I can't say it seriously anymore. But I feel like, the more people you talk with and you collaborate with and you bring to the room, the more subject matter experts you bring in, the more angles you can see things from. And the more advocates you create for the experience that you're going. Done is not done is something I'm not very good at pushing. This idea that everything can always be better. You can always do a better job than the thing you're doing now. And when you put something into market, you can always improve it, right? Done is not done. Done is just where you got to at the time of finishing. And this comes back cool rounds. I do believe process is important. I believe the act of putting a process down and agreeing it with other people is important. I just don't believe that you necessarily have to stick to it. I feel like the act of planning is very important. The plan itself is kind of here or there. I have a lot of projects that end and people go, well, we didn't really stick to that time plan or that initial time plan we set out. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of, we started with it, and I'd rather have started with it than not have started with it. I don't normally like to consolidate things into a single slide, but there's feedback I always get that I should. I think I want to leave you with my most important principle, the thing that I feel like I finish every conversation with if I'm ever mentoring the staff I work with. Just be nice. I'm on various social, Twitter, LinkedIn, and check us out there. Again, it's obnoxiously vague. Cool, thank you.